Welcome to the Church of Rock Show, Episode 2, The Grateful Dead, Live Dead. Sponsoring this episode is Nobody. If you have a product or service that you would like to advertise on the show, please contact us by either going to the website, thechurchofrockshow.com, and using the Contact Us section of the page, or you can send us an email at churchofrockshow@gmail.com, and we will see if we have a mutual fit. You can support the show by telling the music fan in your life about the show. Word of mouth goes a long way and would be greatly appreciated. If you like what you hear, consider leaving us a 5-star review for the show on Apple Podcasts. We want to get this content out to as many people as possible, and those reviews go a long way with getting the show to the top of the directories. Also hit the subscribe button to wherever you listen to your podcast to be sure that you never miss an episode. Welcome to episode 2 of the Church of Rock Show, as we discuss the Grateful Dead, Live Dead. This is going to be a short one, as the album is a chronicle of live shows, and there just aren't very many stories to tell with this album from the band, and also my voice is not all the way back. There's another reason why I'm going to go with a shorter podcast today, so I appreciate you hanging in with me there as I get through this cold. Hopefully this is the last week that I'm going to have to deal with this, so things should get a little bit better from there. Okay, now on to the show. The Grateful Dead is synonymous for its live shows. Their live shows drew millions of fans over 30 years. In 1969, the Grateful Dead were still relatively new to the music scene, but if you go back onto their live show archives, they're already a pretty polished live act. Who are the Grateful Dead? The lineup in 1969 was Jerry Garcia on guitar and vocals, Bob Weir on guitar and vocals, Phil Lesh on bass and vocals, Bill Kreutzmann on drums and percussion, Mickey Hart on drums and percussion, and Ron Pigpen McKernan on organ and vocals. Live Dead is the 4th album released by the Grateful Dead, but is the first total live album release. Anthem of the Sun, released a year prior, was a hybrid studio and live album where audiences could get their first taste of what was the Grateful Dead's bread and butter, which is the live show. The studio stuff were more polished versions of the performances of the tracks which the Dead brought out to the road. In most cases, they are not the definitive versions, as the live stuff shines above the studio tracks in my opinion. Of course, the studio tracks are shinier renditions. Hell, they should be, but most Dead fans will tell you the Dead's music does not need to be shined up. It doesn't need to fit in a box, or in this case, on a 30 to 40 minute LP. The music is best when it's alive and free, with the band given 2+ hours to open things up and explore the far reaches of what's going on in their minds. Live Dead was almost a necessity for the band to release. Their previous album, Aoxomoxoa, left the band heavy in debt, as the total project cost the Dead nearly $200,000, and the album was not a commercial success. The Dead by now were recording all their shows. Doing a live album was a low cost of entry, as they had a catalog of material ready to go. The band really wasn't keen about doing work in the studio, as was restricted to them. Live Dead has some of the freedom, as it is a double album clocking in at just over 75 minutes, chronicling shows from the Avalon Ballroom on January 26, 1969, and the Fillmore West, performed on February 28th and March 2nd of 1969. Check out the show notes page on thechurchofrockshow.com, as there's a cool picture of the concert poster from the Fillmore shows. The 75 minutes is a great snapshot into the Dead's live experience from 1969. The Dead have since officially released the complete shows, which are used from the Live Dead album as part of a deluxe 3-disc set. So if Live Dead is your first exposure to the Dead's live experience from 1969, there's more available from these two shows and beyond Live Dead. Live Dead is known to be the first live album to use 16-track recording. The Dead were already experimenting with 16-track technology in the studio with Aoxomoxoa. Now it was time to take it on the road. A ballsy move on their part, as they had to incur a serious expense on this, but they probably also knew they needed to have a near studio polished recording in order to be considered by the record company for release and to appeal to those who are not familiar with the band. It's one thing to have a 16-track in the studio, but it was a bear to bring it on the road and setting up in a smaller venue. Bill Kreutzmann later explained, "We got our hands on the latest recording technology, a 16-track recorder, which of course is antiquated these days. and we hauled it up the steps of the Avalon and later the Fillmore West, and we became the first band to ever make live 16-track recordings. We weren't trying to make history, we were just trying to record a live album. Studio versions could never do the songs justice, but advances in live recording, some of which were at our own hands, meant that we can bring the Live Dead experience to vinyl. That's the way to do it. Now, know what you're best at, know what your fans are most into, and look to gain a new fan base. Jerry Garcia on Live Dead. We only recorded a few gigs to get the album. We were after a certain sequence of music. It's our music at one of its really good moments. The cover art, which can also be on the can also be seen on the show notes page of Live Dead on churchofrockshow.com, has a cool story. This is pulled straight from the wiki. The title has a double meaning. It refers both to the band, The Dead, playing live, and it is an oxymoron contrasting two words in an apparent contradiction. The artwork created by Robert Donovan Thomas, aka Bob Thomas, also illustrated this juxtaposition. The word live is seen on the front cover, and the word dead fills the back cover on the gatefold. The top part of the word dead on the back cover is a perceptual text anagram, which, when particularly covered, spells acid. The album was officially released on Warner Brothers Records on November 10th, 1969, and its peak Billboard chart position was 62 in 1970. The album was certified gold on August 24th, 2001, 32 years after its release. I had my CD copy of the album by then, so I didn't put it over the top. I would have thought it would have sold better, being that this is probably one of the highest regarded official releases the Dead had. I don't use Rolling Stone magazine's list to be the be-all, end-all rating of music, but while doing my research on Live Dead, I came across Rolling Stone's list of the 50 greatest live albums of all time. I was bracing myself to be disappointed. I knew Live Dead had to make the list, but I was pleasantly surprised it ranked number 7 all time. I was really expecting this to be further down the list, honestly. And even more shocking to me is Live Dead made the Rolling Stone 500 greatest albums of all time list, coming in at the number 247 position. Now, let's get on to the tracks. Live Dead opens with Dark Star. After the Grateful Dead went on hiatus in the fall of 1974 and returned to the road for good in 1976 through the end of their run in 1995, the Dead performing Dark Star at a show is like seeing a unicorn or a Loch Ness Monster. Dark Star has been one of the most beloved tunes by Dead fans, of course of its rarity, and to the more contemporary fans, but in general for the chill mood and because the band would just let loose and explore different musical horizons with the song. Dark Star is set up for this. For its rarity later on, the Dead Dark Star was a staple of their set list in 1969, and this was the perfect opener for the Live Dead album. And I'm sure the track piqued the Dead newbie when they picked up the album in 1969, because any track that takes up a whole side of an LP has to have some sort of mystery to it, or another extreme. If you enjoyed the 3-minute pop song, you may be inclined not to even play this track, which I would pity those people. There is actually a 3-minute single version of Dark Star. Go to the show notes page on Live Dead at churchofrockshow.com. There's a video of the Dark Star single. It is a far different experience than the live jam-outs. The Live Dead Dark Star, which was performed at the Fillmore West on February 27, 1969, can be argued to be one of the best Dark Stars the band's ever played, or it's the most enjoyable. The track clocks in over 23 minutes, which is a marathon for many listeners, but this Dark Star, in my opinion, is tame compared to some of the other performances where the Dead really goes out there and explores and pushes the musical boundaries into another psychedelic realm, and vamp on for over a half hour. This Dark Star is smooth, not too experimental. It's like what the guys would use as their foundation, like a studio cut for what Dark Star would be. The next track is St. Stephen Into the 11. This is side 2 of the album. I'm tackling these two together for the period of Live Dead shows. They were usually played together. Hell, I always associate them together whenever I hear the later version of St. Stephen. I'm like, oh, where's the 11? As the Dead dropped the 11 from heavy play in 1970. But St. Stephen's kept trucking on to the live shows, and with good reason, because it's a really cool, fun song, which can stand alone as a short pop song or it can be explored with an extensive jam. I love this album, but I never dove deep like I am now about these tracks were performed, But here's the shocker. These versions of St. Stephen and the 11 are not from the same show. I always assumed that they were. St. Stephen was performed at the Fillmore West on February 27th, 1969, and the 11 was performed on January 26th, 1969 at the Avalon Ballroom. The performances are very tight, and the recording is spot on because the flow is impeccable. I'm going to leave St. Stephen alone because I hope to talk more about this track in another forum because it is such a prominent Dead track, but I wanted to explore the 11 a bit because it's a really specific piece of music history for the Dead at the time, which was played heavily during 1968 and 1969. Here's a rarity for the podcast. I'm going to be reading verbatim from a passage I found on a website, someone who is an actual musician. The 11, written by the band's lyricist Robert Hunter and bassist Phil Lesh, the Grateful Dead started playing this song in 1968. Their drummer Mickey Hart was responsible for the band exploring unusual music time signatures, and the title is based on the 11-beat signature, as its name suggests. This is an 11/8 time, mostly played as 3 beats and 3 followed by a beat of 2 in the song. The band usually performed this song as the follow-up song in a string of tunes. In early 1968, it was linked with China Cat Sunflower. Then later in 1968, it followed St. Stephen and the William Tell Bridge. They dropped it from the repertoire in early 1970 when Not Fade Away came to follow St. Stephen. Another very cool song, by the way. Jerry Garcia on the odd time signatures on the tracks like the 11 and Dark Star. You can't play confidently and fluidly in those odd time signatures without really knowing what you're doing, without working at it, he said in the record. It's not something that just happened to us. There was a long, slow process that really brought that into being. It should be noted that the St. Stephen that I'm bouncing around, there is the William Tell Bridge, which is the norm for the 1969, which then transitions into the 11. Also note that the China Cat Sunflower theme, which is cool, which keeps up with some of the original vibe to get into the 11. If you want to grab for the spirit of these two pieces of music, go to Live Dead show notes page at churchofrockshow.com and check out the video from the episode of Playboy After Dark from 1969 as the Dead playing St. Stephen is a cool document of the Dead from the Live Dead era. The next track is Turn On Your Love Light. This was always a Pigpen showstopper. Ron Pigpen McKernan, he was a bluesy guy for the Dead. He was cut from a different mold. He was the drinker of the group, while the rest of the guys were more psychedelic explorers. Unfortunately, Pigpen wasn't long for the band, as he was gone by 1971, and unfortunately, he lost his life in 1973. But Turn On Your Love Light is such a powerful song. It is just really upbeat. The band just really jams out, and the song is just really unbelievable here. I'm going to go here and I'm going to jump into these lyrics here. Without a warning, you broke my heart. Taking it, baby, tore it apart. And you left me standing in a dark climb. You said your love for me was dying. So come on, baby. Baby, please. I'm begging you, baby. I'm on my knees. Turn on your light. Let it shine on me. Turn on your love light. Let it shine on me. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. And look at it. That's just a guy right there that's just desperate. Even though, his woman broke his heart, he doesn't care. He's like, please, finding your heart to bring me back. It's a really, really touching blues number. And then it continues on when I get a little lonely in the middle of the night. And I need you, darling, to make things all right. So come on, baby. Baby, please. I'm begging you, baby, because I'm on my knees. Turn on your light. Let it shine on me. Turn on your love light. Let it shine on me. Let it shine on me. Man, this is just so... Pigpen was great with this song. He was... Man, whenever I would pick up these live shows from the Pigpen era, I was always seeking out these Turn On Your Love Lights. He was just so good and just had such a powerful voice. And it's just such a tragedy that, we lost him at such a young age and he wasn't able to continue on with the band. Like I said, this track has 2 lives. There's the Pigpen versions, and then Bobby Ware had a run with the versions leading the vocals for Love Light. Personally, I prefer Pigpen over Bobby, though Bobby did the song justice, but he just doesn't have that bluesy vibe that Pigpen had and the emotion that he poured into the song. Love Light to me is the Pigpen track with the Grateful Dead. The CD version is cool because you get a straight transition from the 11 to Love Light. Back in 1969, it was time to crack out the second record, and Love Light takes up the whole side 3, clocking in at just just around 15 minutes, and it's high intense energy. Now going to the final side of the record, and it opens with Death Don't Have No Mercy. The Dead take a massive left turn from Love Light to the somber, methodical pace of Death Don't Have No Mercy, written by the Reverend Jerry Davis. This track opens the fourth side of the record with Jerry Garcia getting down and dirty playing the blues and jumping right into the vocals a minute in. This is a pretty typical styling for this song in 1969, and I'm sure gave the boys a nice cool down number after a track like Love Light or St. Stephen. Let's jump into these lyrics, which are direct and pull no punches. You know, death don't have no mercy in this land. Death don't have no mercy in this land, in this land. Come to your house. You know he don't take long. Look in your bed this morning. Children find your mother gone. I said, death don't have no mercy in this land. Death will leave you standing and crying in this land. Death will leave you standing and crying in this land, in this land. Well, come to your house. Why, you know he don't stay long. By look in your bed this morning, children find that your brothers and sisters are gone. I said, death don't have no mercy in this land. Death will go in any family in this land. Death will go in any family in this land. Come to your house, you know he don't take long. Look in the bed in the morning, children find your family's gone. I said, death don't have no mercy in this land. Death will leave you standing and crying in this land, in this land. Come to your house. Why, no, it don't stay long. Why, look in this morning, children find your brothers and sisters are gone. I said, death don't have no mercy in this land. I said, pretty direct and powerful stuff here. Talking about death, you know, it's not really a topic that many people want to discuss or even get into, let alone having death being so close to your home, you know, coming in there and just basically saying that nobody is impervious to death. We're all going to be exposed to it in one shape or form, and really death does not discriminate against anybody. It's just something that's inevitable. That's going to happen to all of us at some point. And just going back into these lyrics, it's just so like Grim Reaper-ish. Like death is just showing up at somebody's house, and it's ready to come in. They're going to find who they're looking for, and their life is going to end. And the sad part about death is that somebody just generally ends up finding the person at the end of the day. And what really got to me was the first one here was when you look in the bed this morning, children find your mother gone. To me, that is so sad when that happens, when a child has to find a parent and that has passed away. And then especially when you're looking at it from this context, when you're saying you find your mother gone, is like do they have a father? Are these kids going to be left to their own devices? Is there going to be somebody there that's going to come in and step in and take care of these guys? And it's just always been a very haunting song. And I mean, I love the song. I think the Grateful Dead did a tremendous job at this, and Jerry Garcia just sang the hell out of the song. It's really tremendous. And the next track is Feedback. This is just what the title says. It's an extended jam which features prominent feedback. I would consider this a primal version of what the Dead would do in 1973 with Phil Lesh's Sea Stones half sets, which would ultimately become the space portion of their live shows through the end of the band's run in 1995. Many would consider this noise, and if you really wanted to clear a room of people who enjoy conservative music, play Feedback on its own, and I'm sure they'll leave. In fact, my poor dog growls under her breath when she hears Feedback because of the piercing sounds. I personally enjoyed the Feedback portions of these shows. In fact, when I was tape trading back in the day, I would seek out the shows that had Feedback just because of its scarcity. And after 1969, the band rarely did this. And I wanted to see where they were going here. And the album closes out with And We Bid You Good Night. And this was a common closer for Dead shows in 1968 and 1969, and the band would crack it out at times to close down the shows through the end of their run. It's a quick 30-second number on Live Dead. Simple and peaceful lyrics. Lay down, my dear brothers, lay down and take your rest. I want to lay your head upon your Savior's breast. I love you, but Jesus loves you the best. And I bid you good night, good night, good night. Very, very quiet song, done a cappella by the boys. Fantastic. And it's a great closer. And that closes out the tracks. Now let me share with you a little bit of the story that I have with the album. My experience with the album, I started getting into the Dead at an unfortunately late time, as I never got to see the band live, which is one of my biggest regrets as I have as a music fan. I knew the Dead since I was young, and I probably could have taken in a few shows, but I just wasn't into them to take that much time to go see them. I got into the Dead in 1997, and I immediately was picking up all the studio albums on CD and the major releases, including Live Dead. From the opening tunes of Dark Star, I was in. This was my first live listening experience I had with what I call the Dead's true psychedelic era, which ran through 1969. What's great about the Dead is, if you like an era, an official release is there, and there's a lot more where that came from. Live Dead was an entry level for me to do more exploring as I started collecting the Dick's Pick series, which were full live shows officially released by the band, and then I got into the tape trading community. I really enjoyed Live Dead, and I wanted all of 1969. I love the psychedelic feel that the band was in its sound. Collecting the 1969 shows became a priority of mine. The simplicity of the lyrics and the band taking you on a mind trip with their musical improvisation. The Dead would take you through ebbs and flows with a frenetic pace and then bring you back to earth with a little bit of chill. Live Dead captures that mood perfectly. This is a different Dead from the mid-70s through the run of the band, where they headlined an arena or an outdoor amphitheater, and they had 3.5 hours with 2 distinct sets to tear it up. Those marathons in front of tens of thousands of people. With the 60 shows, they were 1 to 2 hour sprints at smaller venues in front of a few thousand people. And the track selection didn't vary much because their catalog of songs was being developed. But the order was different, so things were kept fresh. I always tend to be more attracted to the times where bands started out, to use as that as a launching point for my appreciation for how they developed over time. This era did the equivalent of watching a newborn learning how to walk and talk and cultivate their personality. It's always good to check in where an act came from initially. The band was young and fresh, on top of their game, and that with Live Dead. And I would consider it a must-own for any music collector, especially if you're into late 60s psychedelic era music. If that's your sweet spot, go ahead and grab Live Dead. As I said, this was going to be a short one here. There wasn't much going on here, but you know what? Live Dead, to me, was such an important album. And unfortunately, when it comes to the Grateful Dead, the studio album just isn't their thing, and I wouldn't consider very many of their studio albums as to being especially strong. So I really, for the Grateful Dead, they're one of my favorite all-time bands, and unfortunately, I'm not going to find too many opportunities to talk about them on this show, just because we're talking about an album-based show here, and the Grateful Dead, even though they released many, many, many albums, they're just not up to par to some of the live releases. And what's great about the Grateful Dead is that they capture just about everything. And everything has been digitized and it's available online. If you go to archive.org, check it out. You're going to find just about every single Grateful Dead show there, which is absolutely fantastic. And that's going to put a close to the show. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Church of Rock Show. I'm working out the kinks and hope to get this show more polished as the weeks go on. I appreciate you sticking with me while I work through each episode. Please subscribe to this show wherever you listen to your podcasts. Right now, the show is available on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and Stitcher, and the show notes page on the website. The show has also been submitted to Google Play, and Spotify, and Stitcher. And if those are your preferred places to listen to the podcast, they'll be there soon. They might actually be there right now, since they have been submitted. If there is another platform that you use to share, please share this with me, and I will work on getting the show there too. Share the show with a friend. Word of mouth goes a long way to grow the show. Visit the show at the Church of Rock. Actually, let's go back there. Visit the show at churchofrockshow.com. It'd be great if I knew my own website. And check out the show notes under the podcast section of the site for bonus material such as videos, photos, and direct links to listen to the albums on Spotify and Apple Music. Also, check us out on social media on Facebook and Instagram on at churchofrockshow.com. Again, wow, we're really messing things up here. And I'm not going to edit this one out. We're going to really keep this one for posterity. Facebook and Instagram at Church of Rock Show. And on Twitter at Church of Rock 75. And special thanks to Hyde for providing the theme music for the Church of Rock Show. And check out and support his work at soundcloud.com/David Hyde Music. Thank you again, and I will catch you next time for another episode of the Church of Rock Show.